Tim Montgomerie is in the studio, the great man himself. So, founder of Conservative Home, man about town, guy who knows all about 10 Downing Street, by the way. Broken Parliament, sacking Sue Gray won't fix the systemic problems at number 10. Do you agree with that?
I do, and I don't really know Sue Gray. I think she was quite a competent civil servant. What I think is tough on her, and maybe she wasn't that great at some of the political direction, was you're just talking to Rod Liddle, Kev, and the government's problems have been legion on multiple levels. And there's almost seemed to be this attempt to scapegoat her, make the woman responsible for all the problems that probably largely the Labour men have created.
The lads.
The lads, yeah. Although I'm not sure I'd ever refer to Keir Starmer as a lad, but I'll let you have a bit of artistic licence.
Well, no, it's supposed to be Morgan McSweeney's...
his tribe, his bench, yeah. I'm sorry.
Like football fans or something.
No, but I think the basic problem seems to be is Labour were never properly tested before the election because my party, the Conservatives, were so terrible. And normally an opposition has to hone its skills. You know, it faces turbulence in opposition, it's tested. It wasn't properly tested. And so, unfortunately, for the country, we are seeing this Labour Party get all of its training done in government. And it's not passing the training test.
About how many people work in Downing Street?
About 20% of them.
Yeah. Jeez, that's very good. Yeah, I've heard it before, but beautifully deployed, if I may say so. How many?
It depends what you really categorise as Downing Street. I'm not trying to sort of evade this, but Downing Street looks quite small from the outside. Yeah. But then there's all these people are packed in because everyone wants to be close to the Prime Minister's office. So the accommodation is awful, but you want to be on that thoroughfare that the Prime Minister and Cabinet Ministers pass by.
Right.
So sort of 40 to 50 people in that inner core. But then when you go broader, the upstairs, into the Cabinet Office, which is really an extension of government, you're talking about hundreds of people. And so hard to, and people, of course, will say they work in Downing Street when really they're Cabinet Office. Everyone wants to be, the number 10 person.
And Sue Gray, apparently, such was her enmity with Morgan McSweeney, who I guess has won this power struggle. He is now the new Chief of Staff. Apparently, during their disputes, she had his desk twice moved further away from Keir Starmer's.
Absolutely. But it is, were you a fan of the West Wing, the American?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and of course, the West Wing, it was about geography. One thing that if it is a budding politics student wanting to know, an interesting dissertation, do a dissertation on the geography. Where people sit. Well, the office location really does matter, and it's like in all offices. It's why working from home doesn't really work. Technically, if you're on the Zoom calls and you've got that you're part of the office programme calls, you know what's going on. But it is actually the water cooler conversations. It's the conversations when you have the pub. You go to the pub afterwards. It's the little conversations you hear when Cabinet Ministers are waiting by the door before they go into Cabinet Office. You hear what they're saying to each other. Office location couldn't be more important. So maybe she didn't know what she was doing, moving.
She obviously didn't move him far enough away. So what I'm getting at is you hear this under every Prime Minister. Dysfunction at number 10. Dysfunction at number 10. And clearly it exists all the time, but clearly under Keir Starmer it's reached sort of epidemic levels. Try to explain what is so difficult about making number 10 Downing Street function properly.
Well, it's pretty basic, really. We are a country of 70 million people. We're one of the most complex, advanced economies in the world. And government is complicated. Tens and hundreds of thousands of people work on it. And what we try and do in the British state is we get 40, 50, 100, 200 people who are probably largely have been immersed in politics all their life. They haven't created a business. They haven't served in the army. They haven't worked in in any company for very long. And of course, this Labour Party hasn't even been in power for 14 years. So you have very inexperienced, politically obsessed people trying to control everything from quite an old, cramped office. Does that kind of answer your question? It's almost like Britain is a very centralised state, over-centralised, but worse than that, it's over-politicised as well.
Now, Starmer in particular is really having trouble with the number 10 machine, isn't he? What is he doing wrong? I mean, what's wrong with this guy? I mean, there's so many questions about him that he just seems to be incompetent. He doesn't seem to be able to do this job. All aspects of it seem to be falling apart at the seam. So does this speak to his personality, his character? Is that what we're talking about here?
I think there may be three problems. First of all, I think he's quite sensitive to criticism. In the election debate, about the BBC election debate a week before polling day, I think Sunak really got under his skin. Do you remember that? He asked him some very questions about immigration. Sunak was not a good politician, but Sunak did not like... Prime Minister, now Starmer, did not like tough criticism. So I don't think he takes criticism well. So if you have someone who doesn't take criticism well, their aides will know that, so they won't go with him with criticism. And every good leader needs to have constructive advice such as that. I think the second thing, he's a lawyer. Lawyers take sometimes a long time to take decisions. You can't have that in a government which is fast moving. And then I think the third problem is just basically there are too many political people around him, and he hasn't really been ruthless enough with some of his aides in the way that he has been ruthless with his MPs. In
terms of him being a lawyer, I think this is at the heart of some of his problems anyway. For example, you know, freebiegate, sleazegate, all the free gifts and hospitality that they've been trousering. The way he sees it, because he has very much a legal brain, is, but we didn't break the rules. Yeah. Legally we've done nothing. This is nothing criminal. We didn't break the rules, so that's all right then, isn't it? Well, it's not. And what I think, you'll be far more knowledgeable about this than me, but what I think is, I don't think Starmer and his inner circle realise that they're only at the beginning of the process of trying to sort this mess out, insofar as, you know, when he said, I won't take any more free clothes. Yeah, well, what else free aren't you going to take? His move last week when he said, I'll give £6,000 back, which is all the freebies I've taken since I've been Prime Minister. By the way, surely when you become Prime Minister, you must know you don't take free stuff, but he has. So he said, I'm going to hand back this £6,000, implicitly thereby admitting this was wrong. That £6,000 represents, if you add it all up, about 1/20 of all the free stuff he's taken, all the freebies he's pocketed, 1/20. So what he's essentially saying when he gives back £6,000 is, what I've done is a bit wrong, it's kind of wrong, but it's not so wrong as I'm going to give everything back. Well, I don't think he understands that just because they've been within the rules, that he has got himself into such a mess, him and all his scrounging mates have got themselves into such a mess that I think the only thing the public will now accept, the only way he can dig himself out of this hole, is to announce, given the depth of concern about all of this, we will no longer accept freebies. No more Arsenal tickets, no more Taylor. Yes?
It's too late, Kevin. I think it's too late for them. Everything is about context. If this Labour government, for example, had been elected in better times, you could give them to be kind to them, and had been cutting taxes, increasing benefits, I don't think people would have been objected so much to them trousering the money, to quote you. But what is the single biggest thing that this government has done and is known for? It is taking the winter fuel allowance away from pensioners. So in that context, people say, so you're taking away money which for me is incredibly important for me, heating my own home, and I still have to pay for my spectacles, I still have to pay for my clothes, but you're getting them paid for you. Yeah. And it's the context is everything. I think the British people are reasonable people. If they think they're being treated fairly and in the same way that politicians are treating themselves, they'll be forgiving. But they don't see that from Keir Starmer. They see someone who's living by different rules. And that's where, of course, this potentially most poisonous and defining expression is going to haunt Keir, two-tier Keir. Two-tier policing, two-tier goods and freebies, two-tier treatment of people in 101 different ways. It rhymes, of course, it works, it's memorable, and I think it may be the albatross around his neck that he'll never escape from.
Yeah, I don't know if his mum's still alive, but he should turn around to her and say, "Why didn't you call me Algernon or something like that?"